Russia is the aggressor, not retaliating in Ukraine. Latest update. This is what we will talk about today. In this video, we will discuss the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, debunking the false claim that Russia's actions are retaliation of some sort. We highlight Russia's role as the clear aggressor and provide the latest updates, including Russia's recent attack on Ukraine's energy infrastructure. We also analyze the broader implications of the invasion. So, in this one picture, here is Russia for you. Hello there, I'm Elena, welcome back to my channel Enough of Propaganda. Let's make truth available for everyone. Please like, subscribe, share my videos if it is safe for you to do. Before we will talk about Russia and Ukraine, I want to kinda wrap up several of my last videos and tell a couple words about not only about Russia and Ukraine, but about other countries. If to say about Syria, as you know that Assad regime falls, and Assad now is hiding in Russia, in Moscow, and claims that he peacefully resigned. Yeah, after Syrian forces, oppositional forces had to kick him out. And now Russia is trying to pretend that they buddies now with the people who they literally tried to wipe out of the face of the planet in the past. Now, all of a sudden, they're not a T word, but they are opposition. At the same time, the protests in Georgia are continuing. In Abkhazia, which is a part of Georgia occupied by Russia, it seemed like miraculously hydroelectric stations stopped working and Russia can't really provide the energy. All those two so-called independent republics, which nobody recognizes in Georgia, which Russia occupied in 5 days war during 2008, they completely were supported by Russia in every way, financially, energy-wise, and everything. And now, oh, no, you dare to protest against Russia? Well, no energy for you. This is how Russia operates. And this is Ukraine. Russia is liberating for over 10 years of the aggressive war. This is what Russia brings to people. There used to be peaceful life in here. Now there is no peace, no life. I bet Ukrainians who lived in here happy to be liberated by Russia. This is for everyone, for Syria, for Georgia, for everyone who is thinking that Russia is liberating somebody and that something good happened with the countries who is under Russian's boot. This is Bakhmut, Ukraine, before Russian attack. I'll show you just a little piece of this video so you see what life in Ukraine was before Russia attacked it. This was Bakhmut. Peaceful city. And this is what happens after. To peaceful people who live peacefully in their own country, Ukraine, who didn't attack anyone, Russia came. And this is what happened. On this day, 30 years ago, Russian troops entered Chechnya, Ichkeria. Much time has passed since, but the words of the president of Ichkeria, Chechnya, Dzhokhar Dudayev, still remain relevant today. He predicted that Russia would eventually attack Ukraine. This is what he said. Russia always offers negotiations when it's struggling, when plans are falling apart, in order to buy time, regroup, correct mistakes, and find a weak spot, and then strike again with renewed strength. Dzhokhar Dudayev. And he was right. When Russia couldn't win from Chechnya, who wanted independence, during the Soviet Union collapse and so on, Chechnya was a republic inside Russia, and they wanted independence. When they couldn't, after a long war, they eventually said, oh yeah, let's have peace negotiations, let's give them some independence, and then they attacked them again and wiped them out. And now Putin's puppet, Kadyrov, ruling them. Well, it's hard to say who is puppet, Putin puppet of Kadyrov, or Kadyrov is puppet of Putin. But it's not just start with Putin, Russian aggression. Imperialism is deeply rooted in the history and culture of Russia. As long as it exists, Russia will continue to attack its neighbors. That's several lessons we have to learn from Dudayev. And he said that as long as Russia exists, they will never give up their ambitions. And he also predicted that Ukraine will never tolerate it and Russia eventually will attack Ukraine. And the West has been blind and impotent when witnessing the brutal, bloody and systematic destruction of people in Ichkeria, Chechnya, nowadays, West stood idly by and rewarded Russia as the aggressor with strong economic ties and political legitimacy. Finally, if we truly want to live in a peaceful world, Russia needs to be defeated. We cannot fall into fake negotiation trap. I would say again. And this is true, and I have the whole video why we shouldn't trust Russian ceasefire. It was already during the war in Ukraine, at least 29 of them at the time. They all failed. And the so-called Minsk agreements. And even Gabrielis Landsbergis from Lithuania said that we should not trust this country again about all of this. No negotiations with Russia ever work. It's always bring death and destruction. To Ukraine, to Chechnya, Ichkeria, and so on. Now let's talk about Ukraine. Here's CBC. Russia fires nearly 300 drones and missiles in attack on Ukraine energy sector, Kyiv says. So last night, Russia launched massive aerial attack against Ukraine on Friday, firing 93 missiles and almost 200 drones, according to Ukrainian President Zelensky. Ukrainian defenses shot down 81 missiles, including 11 cruise missiles. They were intercepted by F-16 warplane provided by Western allies earlier this year. Russia is losing the war. Russia just now was defeated in Syria by a bunch of guys in sandals running around in the sandbox. What Putin does, he is whacking the civilians. He whacked hospitals in Syria, he is whacking energy sector in Kyiv. In front of the cold spell, which they would have about -14 coming up weather. Yet Ukrainians are not giving up. They are hiding in metro while Russia is whacking them with missiles. This is Russian ballistic missile hits a clinic in Zaporizhia, Ukraine. This is part of my video from a year ago, when Putin is admitting hitting Ukrainian infrastructure, energy infrastructure. He's admitting to a war crime. And look at his smiley face, look at how happy he is.
Сейчас много шума по поводу наших ударов по энергетической инфраструктуре соседней страны.
With the champagne, he's just gently talking about right now there are lots of noise about our attacks of energy infrastructure of neighbor's country. He doesn't even call Ukraine by the name Ukraine.
Да, мы делаем это.
Yes, we're doing it. Look at that, he admitting to the war crimes right now. I want to underline, Russia is the aggressor. There is no question about retaliating of anything. This is not a retaliation. Ukraine did not attack Russia. The war in Ukraine started in 2014 by Russia invaded Crimea with hybrid occupation and basically attached Crimea to Russia, annexed Crimea, and then created problems into that so-called republics in Donbass, so-called DPR and LPR, which Russia didn't even want to attach to Russia at the time, because they wanted swords on the body of Ukraine, so Ukraine couldn't join NATO. Even Ukraine didn't plan to join NATO in 2014. There was no talk about it at the time. Ukraine gave up third in the world nuclear arsenal to Russia in exchange of signing Budapest Memorandum, when the several countries, include United States and UK and Russia, signed the paper that they not gonna attack Ukraine, especially with nuclear weapons. May I remind you, Ukraine did not attack anyone. Russia attacked Ukraine. And today is 1024 days. The war is going on. And this is what is happening. Mass shooting at Ukraine energy. But on the bright side, people who made it will not sleep quietly. In Moscow region, the deputy chief of general creator of Mars company, Mikhail Shatsky, who was involved in modernization of Russian missiles, will not killing Ukrainians anymore. According to Michael Naki, Shatsky was liquidated by Ukraine. And by the way, companies like Rosatom and Roscosmos, which is Russian nuclear company and a Russian space company, are not under sanctions. Meanwhile, They helping develop missiles, which is killing Ukrainians right now. They should be under sanctions. At the same time, Putin awarded for heroism Russian 5th separate motor rifle brigade based on Donetsk region. And this brigade is famous for torture and murder. And literally they killed and tortured and killed American Russian Bentley, who betrayed the United States and went to fight for Russia in Ukraine. That stupid American ended up in Ukraine. He thought he is doing a good thing, helping genocidal Russian war. So the Russians themselves tortured him and killed him. And I would say good results. But now Major General Pavel Klimenko, who was killed, he is awarded with the also heroism of and so on. And even on his funeral, people were writing in the social networks, Russian people, that he tortured and beating up his own people, and his brigade famous for torture and abuse. Famous for torture and abuse of their own people. The list of Russian war crimes against Ukraine is going on and on and on. I have 2 videos about Russia abducting Ukrainian children. And now, President of Ukraine Zelensky posted that another solid piece of evidence of Russia war crimes against Ukraine and Ukrainians is the Yale HRL study. Yale researchers have identified hundreds of Ukrainian children from Donetsk and Lugansk regions who have been abducted by Russia since February 2022, as well as their locations and the deportation routes used. And they basically stealing Ukrainian children, getting Russians adopting them, changing their names, changing their citizenship, so it would be impossible to find them. As I said, I have 2 videos on that, so you're welcome to watch it. Another reminder of Russian genocide. After the liberation of the city of Izium by Ukrainian soldiers in September 2022, a mass grave with 447 bodies of Ukrainian citizens tortured and killed by Russian troops during the occupation of the city was discovered. Never forget, never forgive. Please keep in mind, for everyone who now talking about secession of the territories, this war is not about territories, period. This war is about destroying Ukraine, wiping it from the face of the planet. And this is what Russia is doing on the occupied territories. Yeah, good idea. Let's leave to Russia the territories it occupies, so they could commit war crimes and hide it, like they are doing in Mariupol. Over 20,000 people probably murdered and tortured and buried in there. And now Russia has plenty of time to destroy any evidence of this. The same thing happened in every town Russia occupied. It was Izium, Liman, Bucha. It was Sloviansk in 2014. I have a video about Bucha in Sloviansk. This is what Russia does. It happened in Kherson. It happened everywhere where Russia occupied. Izium and Bucha, it happened that they were liberated fast and Russians couldn't hide the war crimes. We need to know about this. This is why those territories cannot be left in Russian hands. The same thing happened in Crimea. I have videos about that. Crimean Tatars were exterminated, some of them. The same thing is happening everywhere. So all that kind people who said, oh, let's freeze the conflict, let's stop the war, they leaving these people in the hands of mafia state Russia, who is doing with them this. We need to remember about that. This is a genocide and aggressive war on Russian side. Let's say just a couple words about the front in Ukraine and in Kursk region. According to Deep State, in Donetsk region, Ukraine, Russia only could gain about 9 kilometers in 9 months. So the Russian losses are horrendous. One of the days I noticed it was the biggest number of Russian losses, 2,030 people. And they keep losing it. 1,400, 1,500, 1,600 every single day. At the same time in Russian Kursk region, which Ukraine invaded, to defend itself, Russia is losing. Again, they couldn't catch any liberated, in their opinion, any towns, any significant towns. Absolutely zero. Russian tactics of meat grinder and throwing everybody into meat grinder, wounded, invalids, people who missing leg or something like that, people who supposed to be in evacuation kind of groups, construction workers, migrants Russia captured in Russia and thrown to Ukraine, giving some results. Because near Pokrovsk, one of the important Ukrainian city, Russia is moving forward. And they about maybe 2 kilometers from Pokrovsk. And Ukrainians are worried that it is highly likely that they might not be able to hold Pokrovsk, which is very sad. This is partly because of the commanding officer and officers in that region, and they gonna be replaced. They just getting replaced right now. Hopefully the situation will improve. There are mass desertions of Russian troops in Kherson region, Ukraine. Meanwhile, I have news from my home city Volgograd in Russia. This stalagmites or something like that. This is a frozen feces in downtown Volgograd. Well, what do you expect when you're fighting aggressive war and erecting monuments to Stalin? Well, enjoy your stalagmites then. I already mentioned to you in the past about how fantastic Russian economy is doing, and the ruble collapsing isn't a problem now, and stagflation isn't even a big deal. A recession is coming, and Russian economy in a horrible position. The sign says, who will tell me what is on the picture? Is it a Nord Stream 2 or a power of Siberia? This is how Russian people delivering gas into their homes. The fact that Russian state-controlled TV has to say this, that speaks volumes. Russian economy stays strong amid sanctions and dollar surge. Ha ha ha. Even the chief of central bank Nabiullina admitted that Russia is going down, Russian economy is going down, it's collapsing. And despite whatever she could do in the past to help Russian economy and to help Russia fighting the aggressive war in Ukraine, there is nothing she can do. Meanwhile, Russian oligarchs and even Putin's youngest daughter, living in Paris, Luisa Rozova, illegitimate daughter of Putin, is living in Europe, in so bad and horrible and immoral Europe, which is supposed to be so horrible and such an enemy to Russia. Meanwhile, they don't even bother to bring their own children back home because they don't want to live in Russia. The heroes of Russia's special military operation, how they call the war in Ukraine, are coming home. I predicted this will happen, and here you go. A next-door neighbor came over to ask to keep the noise down in the middle of the night in St. Petersburg. He got his skull broken and lost consciousness. This is another Russian hero, shooting at something he can't steal. If you can steal, destroy it. And he is former Russian President Medvedev, who is threatening the world. I don't know how many times. When last time I checked, it was 57 times, but it was a long ago. So probably, definitely over 60 times he threatened the world with nukes. Now he's saying, as our president has repeatedly said, our country is open for negotiations. At the same time, they're bombing into the oblivion Ukrainian energy infrastructure. Wow, what a negotiations. Yeah, and basically his message is, give us what we want. This is the reality. Okay, let's give Ukraine Kursk region they're occupying right now then. I had the video on purpose made about Istanbul agreements, which was not an agreement, there was never agreements back then. And I explained why. Because it would be death for Ukraine. And this is what Russia is proposing. They not intend to agree and they not intend to have negotiations. They intend to wipe Ukraine from the face of the planet and move further. That's why Putin and Russia has to be stopped. Now. And somebody is trying right now. Naked feminine activists staged a protest against Russia and the UN near the Palace of Nations in Geneva. This is how it happened. They are trying to cut the legs of the chair with a chainsaw. Eventually they got arrested. At the KGB meeting, Putin threatened Trump. Called him on the one hand smart and experienced, and on the other hand, basically, he said he's not safe even now from assassination attempts and stuff like that. And lying that, oh, in Russia everything is so perfect. The gangsters not going after families and children. They wiping out the whole cities full families and children. That's how Russia doing it. So watch and learn, United States. This is how it's done. You're going on only after the main guy, but you're going after the whole family. And lying about everything, as always. But kind of reminder to future president of the United States, Trump, that Putin isn't his buddy. If he thinks so, he's mistaken. Even Turkey is expressing support for Ukraine and saying that they won't support peace plan with territorial concessions. And Turkey expressed support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, including Russian-occupied Crimea. The Kremlin uses the UN for blackmail and threats. The ultimate level of Kyiv diplomacy. We have witted the biggest club. Submit to us or we will start swinging it. They lying about the weapons, by the way, but nevertheless, they pretending that they have a super weapon nobody can stop, and because of that everybody have to get down on their knees and accept Russian ideas, Russian terms, and Russian right to grab any land they want. Well, good luck to the United States. Get down on your knees then. On the bright side, finally, the European Union has proposed to target Chinese companies and individuals with visa bans and asset freezes over their dealings with Russian firms linked to Moscow war effort in Ukraine. Western officials have said that Chinese support basically had a major effect on the battlefield. They providing chips, they providing possibility for Russia to make missiles to hit Ukraine. And that has to stop. Sir William Browder, who was fighting with Putin for a long time, said if Trump cuts aid for Ukraine, it will lead to Ukraine defenses collapsing, which will set off a refugee crisis in Europe like we never see before. And that's before Putin trains he guns the Baltics. This is all avoidable if we seize the $300 billion of Russian reserves. I say give it to Ukraine. There is a good video on the Silicon Curtain channel which saying it's not only possible, it's doable. There are all the ways to do it, except for political will. We need to stop Putin. Russian banks collapsing, Assad regime collapsed, I would say already. Iran collapsing, Hamas collapsing, Hezbollah is collapsing. Keep pushing, folks. Dear Putin, let's speed up to the part where you kill yourself in a bunker. Ukrainians are strong people, and they are fighting for their survival. This is why we need to help Ukraine as much as we can. Putin's regime on the verge of collapse. We need to keep pushing. I agree with that. Let's help Ukraine as much as we can. Jake Bro, by the way, in his campaign collected over $1,200,000 to help Ukraine. Please help everyone as much as you can. This will help the Russian people as well. Even, maybe not even more than Ukrainians, but a lot. Putin has to fall. And the sooner, the better for everyone else. Thank you for watching, learn the truth, and stay informed. See you later.